Good afternoon, my dear friends. I'm Albertina Fontaine-Smith, but everyone here in Springdale calls me Grandma Tina. I'm 73 years blessed, thank the Lord, and I've been living in this little corner of Arkansas for almost 30 years now. Life here is peaceful, you know? Every day I wake up early, before the sun even rises, and go straight to my kitchen to prepare that fresh coffee my grandkids love so much when they come to visit. My house is small but cozy, with a living room where I keep my most precious collection, antique boxes of all types and sizes. I have more than 50 of them, organized on shelves my oldest son made for me. Each box holds a memory, a letter, a photo, a little piece of my history. I started this collection after I understood the value of keeping life's treasures safe. Some things need to be protected, preserved from time and prying eyes. Every Saturday morning, after I clean the house, I sit in my old armchair and choose one of these boxes to open. Sometimes I reread old letters, other times I just touch the objects inside, remembering where they came from, what they mean. It's my private ritual, my moment to converse with the past and be thankful for the present. My greatest joy today are my 3 children and 6 grandchildren. I raised my children alone, with much sacrifice, but with lots of love, too. Marcelo, my oldest, lives nearby with his wife and 2 children. Heather, my middle child, lives in Memphis with her husband and 3 kids. And my youngest, Timothy, is in Nashville, and just gave me a new granddaughter, little Jade. I started recording these videos because my granddaughter, Camilla, insisted. She said, "Grandma, your stories are really important. Lots of people can learn from you." At first I was shy, imagine that, a lady my age appearing on all this internet. But then I started to enjoy it. It's like I'm sitting in my living room with all of you, sharing a cup of coffee and some life stories. And you, my dears, who are watching me now, tell me in the comments, from which corner of this great country are you watching me? And what time is it there? Are you watching early while having coffee, during lunch, or close to bedtime? I always read everything and imagine you in your homes, taking time to listen to this old lady here. Let me know, okay? Let's get to know each other better. If you like my way of talking, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories. It's so good to know there's someone on the other side listening to me, makes this grandma feel less alone. Today I want to tell you a difficult story, but one that needs to be told. It's about how lies can imprison us for years, even decades, and how the truth, even when discovered late, has the power to set us free. A story about a girl who grew up believing she wasn't worthy of love because someone poisoned her most precious memories. That girl, my dears, was me. I remember like it was yesterday when I lost my mother. I was only 7 years old and my world completely fell apart. But what came after? Oh, what came after was much worse than the pain of loss. I was born in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, down in the southern part of the state where the Arkansas River flows majestically. Our little house was in the simplest part of town, close to the river. It was a wooden house with a front porch where Mama put 2 fern plants that swayed with the river breeze. The yard was packed dirt, and I remember the smell of damp earth after the rain, which mixed with the aroma of the sweet potatoes Mama planted in the back. My father, Oliver Fontaine, worked at a nearby lumber mill. He was a tall man of few words with large, calloused hands. Back then, before everything changed, he would come home covered in sawdust, but always brought something small for me, a different fruit, a colorful stone he found by the river. My mother, Dorothy, was his opposite, petite, talkative, always humming while washing clothes or preparing lunch. It was just the 3 of us. Mama said I was her only blessing, because after me, she couldn't have any more children. Every night she would sit on the edge of my bed, run her hand through my hair, and tell stories about Johnny Appleseed, Paul Bunyan, Pecos Bill, legends from our region that made my eyes shine with curiosity and fear. Tiny Tina, she called me. Never forget that a mother's love is like the Arkansas River. It might be distant from your eyes, but it always finds a way to come back. My routine was simple. I woke up with the roosters crowing, had breakfast with cornbread that Mama prepared, and went to the little town school. It was a small building with just 2 rooms, where Miss Zenobia taught all the children together of different ages. After school, I played with the neighbors, Mindy and Nancy, jumping rope, playing house under the oak trees, or we'd go down to the riverbank to collect colorful shells. On Sundays, we went to the little Baptist church where Mama was very devoted. After service, it was the day to eat her famous fried chicken with biscuits and gravy that nobody could make like her. It was in 1959, I had just turned 7, when I noticed Mama started losing a lot of weight. She coughed at night, and sometimes I caught her putting a cloth to her mouth that came back stained with red. She'd quickly hide it when she saw me and smile, saying it was nothing, just a silly cold. But I could tell something was wrong by the way the neighbors looked at her, with that pity in their eyes that a small child doesn't understand but feels. My father stayed away more and more, saying he needed to work extra to buy your mama's medicine. And Mama, even weak, continued to tell me stories, to brush my hair, to teach me simple recipes. "Pay attention, Tiny Tina," she would say. "A woman needs to know her way around a kitchen. It's a form of love." There was a small office in our house, more like a corner really, where Daddy kept documents and some things he called important. There was an old safe there, one of those iron ones with a big key. Sometimes I saw Mama go in there when Daddy wasn't around, but I never really understood what she was doing. One afternoon, I came back from school and found the house full of people. Neighbor Mrs. Josephine hugged me crying, and that's when I knew Mama had gone to heaven. Tuberculosis, which in those days consumed so many people in our region, had taken her away. I remember the simple casket, the garden flowers that the neighbors brought, and the heavy silence of my father, who didn't cry in front of anyone. That night, lying in my little bed, I waited for Mama to come as always, to tell me a story before sleep. I hugged my rag doll tight, the only one I had, made by her hands, and cried softly until I fell asleep. I didn't know it yet, but that would be the last night of peace I would have for many, many years. After the funeral, Daddy changed. He didn't go back to work for several weeks. He spent his days drinking whiskey, silent, staring at nothing. The few words he directed at me were harsh, as if I was to blame for something. "You have her eyes," he would say, and it didn't sound like a compliment, but an accusation. The first time he came into my room at night, I thought he had finally come to tell me a story, like Mama used to do. But the strong smell of whiskey and his look told me something very different was about to happen. And it happened. And it continued happening, night after night, while I closed my eyes tight and tried to imagine I was somewhere else, far away. The worst wasn't even the pain, which over time my childish body learned to endure. It was what he whispered in my ear, always with his back to me, as if he couldn't face me. "Your mother never really loved you. If she did, she wouldn't have gone away and left you with me." His words, repeated over and over again, began to take root in my child's heart. Was it true? Didn't Mama love me? Why had she left me? And gradually, the good memories became blurred while his words echoed louder than the memories of her voice. And that's how I went from the colorful, safe world of my childhood to a dark place that seemed to have no way out. By 10, I was no longer a child. Innocence had been torn from me, along with the certainty of my mother's love. By 12, I was no longer the same girl. At school, I was always quiet in a corner, while the other children played at recess. Teacher Miss Zenobia noticed my isolation and sometimes called me to help clean the blackboard or arrange books on the shelf, perhaps to give me some purpose, some importance. "Albertina, so intelligent, but so sad," she would say, fixing my always poorly combed hair. "What's going on in that little head, child?" I wanted to tell her. My God, how I wanted to open my mouth and let out all that was suffocating me inside. But the words simply wouldn't come. It was as if there was a permanent knot in my throat, and behind it, fear. Fear of what would happen if I spoke. Fear they wouldn't believe me. Fear that what my father said was true, that nobody really cared about me, that I was worth nothing. At home, I learned to move like a ghost. I stepped lightly on the wooden floor to make no noise, waited for my father to fall asleep to go to the bathroom, ate quickly and in silence. Some days, he didn't even notice my presence, busy with his whiskey bottle. Those were the best days. On the worst, he would come back from the mill with that look I knew all too well. "Come here, girl," he would call, and my entire body would freeze with dread. It was on a Sunday afternoon. I had just returned from church. I went alone now, trying to maintain some connection with the world before, when I entered the house and found my father rummaging through some old boxes that were kept on top of the wardrobe. "What are you doing standing there? Come help," he ordered, his voice already slurred from drinking. They were my mother's things that he had never thrown away. Clothes, a few personal items, a blue rosary she always carried. And at the bottom of one of the boxes, a small brown book, worn at the edges. "This is useless," my father grumbled, carelessly throwing the book back into the box. "I'll get rid of all this junk." That night, I couldn't sleep. I was thinking about the little book. It seemed to be a diary or something like that. What if there was something from my mother in there? Something that could tell me if it was true, if she really didn't love me like my father insisted on repeating. I waited until I heard his snores coming from the living room. He had drunk so much that he hadn't even come to my room that night. Tiptoeing, I went to the kitchen where he had left the boxes. I looked for the little book and found it. It was a prayer book, the kind you bought at church. I flipped through it disappointed, but something fell out. A piece of paper folded several times. It was a letter. The handwriting was delicate, rounded, clearly a woman's. I began to read under the weak light coming from the street. "My dear tiny Tina, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer there. The doctor said I don't have much time, but I don't want your father to know this yet. He would be desperate, and you know how he gets when he's upset. I want you to know that every moment with you was the best of my life. From your first cry to the last smile I will see. You are strong, my daughter. Stronger than you imagine. There is something important I need to tell you. In your father's office, in the old safe, I have kept something for you. It's what I could gather in recent months, selling embroidery and pies in secret. It's not much, but it might be enough for you to start a life away from here when you're older. The key to the safe is..." And there the letter ended abruptly, as if my mother had been interrupted while writing. My heart was beating so hard I thought my father could hear it from the other room. My mother had left something for me. She cared about me, thought about my future. That didn't match at all with the image my father painted of her every day. From that day on, something changed inside me. A small flame of hope was lit. If that letter was telling the truth, there was a treasure hidden in that safe. Not just money, but proof of my mother's love. Proof that my father was lying. The safe was in the small office, a room that was always kept locked. My father carried the key to the office with him, but where was the key to the safe that my mother mentioned? The letter said she had hidden it somewhere, but that information was missing. I began to observe my father with different eyes. It was no longer just fear I felt. It was anger, a cold, calculating anger that gave me strength to keep living. I began to study his habits, his schedules. He left almost every morning for the mill and returned at dusk. On Thursdays, he went to the neighboring town and only returned Friday night, usually more drunk than normal. It was on one of these Thursdays that I had my first chance. As soon as he left, I ran to try to open the office door. I tried with a thin knife, with a hairpin, with everything I had seen in movies that sometimes played at the only theater in town. Nothing worked. "Your father is suspicious," said Mrs. Josephine one afternoon when I went to help her hang clothes on the line. "He's been asking if you've been talking to anyone, if you've been telling anything." I felt a chill in my stomach. "I haven't said anything, Mrs. Josephine, I swear." She looked around as if checking if there was no one nearby. "Look, child, I'm not blind or deaf. Your mother was my friend, you know. Before passing, she made me promise I would look after you. I haven't been able to keep that promise right, forgive me. I lowered my head. Could she know? Could she see the marks on my arms, the permanent dark circles under my eyes? Your mother was saving money, she continued, in an even lower voice. She sold embroidery, sweet potato pies. She said it was for the future, but never really explained. Look, if you need help, any help, my door is always open. That night, when my father returned, something was different. He seemed nervous, restless. "Who's been messing with my things?" he asked suddenly, staring at me with those bloodshot eyes. "No one, Daddy. I don't even go in there." He approached, and I instinctively took a step back. His breath was a mixture of whiskey and cigarettes. "You've been getting too smart lately. You were talking with Josephine today, weren't you? What were you two talking about so much?" "Nothing, Daddy. I just went to help her with the laundry." He grabbed my arm forcefully. "You think I'm stupid? You think I don't know what goes on in this town? Everyone here feels sorry for poor little Albertina, the poor thing who lost her mother. Let me go, Daddy. You're hurting me." Your mother was like that too, you know. Thought she could fool me. Thought I didn't see her hiding things from me, saving money in secret. That confirmed what the letter and Mrs. Josephine had said. My mother really was saving money. But she's gone and left you with me. You know why? Because deep down, she didn't care that much. If she did, she would have fought harder to live, wouldn't she? His words were like poison, trying to extinguish the small flame of hope I had lit. But this time, I didn't believe him. For the first time, I clearly saw the lie behind his words. "Now go to your room," he ordered, pushing me, "and don't think I'm not keeping an eye on you." That night, lying in bed, waiting for what always happened, I repeated to myself like a mantra, "She loved me, she loved me, she left something for me." When he entered the room, drunk as always, I was no longer the same frightened girl. On the outside, I remained still, looking at the wall, enduring. But inside, a resolution was growing. I would find that key, open that safe, and discover the truth, whatever it took. The following months were a game of cat and mouse. My father, increasingly suspicious, started locking everything in the house, drawers, closets, even the pantry where we kept food. The office, then, became almost a safe in itself, with a new and more resistant padlock. The nights continued to be a torment, but now there was something different. I was no longer alone with my despair. My mother's voice, through that incomplete letter, kept me company. During the day, when he left for the mill, I searched every inch of the house, looking for the damned key to the safe. I looked in all imaginable places, inside empty cans, sewn into the linings of old pillows, buried in plant pots. Nothing. At school, my behavior changed. I started paying more attention, asking questions. One day, after class, Miss Zenobia called me. "Albertina, you're different, more present." I shrugged, not knowing what to answer. "You know, I knew your mother," she continued. "Dorothy always came to school meetings, even before you started studying. She always wanted to know how everything worked, was always preparing you for the future." That was like water in the desert for me. Another confirmation that my mother cared, worried. "She left something for you in the school library," Zenobia said suddenly, looking around like someone sharing a secret. "A book. She asked me to keep it and give it to you when you were a little older. I think now is the time." My heart nearly jumped out of my mouth. Could it be possible? Zenobia went to the cabinet at the back of the room and returned with a thick book bound in dark leather. Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. "Your mother loved this book," explained Zenobia. "She said it was about a child who overcomes terrible circumstances and finds their way in life." With trembling hands, I took the book. It was heavy, the pages yellowed by time. I quickly flipped through it and almost dropped it when a small envelope slipped from between the pages. She said you would know what to do when the time came. Zenobia smiled with watery eyes. Dorothy was a special woman, Albertina. Never doubt that. I kept the envelope inside my blouse, close to my heart, and thanked the teacher with a tight hug, the first genuinely affectionate physical contact I had in years. I only opened the envelope when I was alone, hidden behind the school. Inside was a small brass key and a note with the same delicate handwriting as the letter. For when you need to start over, trust Josephine. It wasn't the key to the safe. It was too small for that. But it was something my mother had left for me, another proof of her love and concern. I kept it hanging on a thin cord, hidden under my clothes, close to my heart, like a protective amulet. As the months passed, my father became increasingly violent, not just with me, but with everyone. He lost his job at the mill for fighting drunk with the boss. He started owing money all over town. Our situation, which was already difficult, drastically worsened. On a particularly bad night, when he returned distraught after learning that no one would extend him any more credit, the worst happened. Usually, the nightly ritual was silent. He barely spoke. But that night, he seemed possessed by a fury I had never seen before. "You're just like her," he shouted, throwing objects around the house. "You have the same look, the same way of defying me." I tried to hide in my room, but he broke down the door. What followed was so violent that even now, so many years later, I can't put it into words. When it finally ended, I was lying on the floor, almost unconscious. Before staggering out, he said something that would change everything. "Tomorrow we're leaving this place. I've already sold the house. There's a man in Little Rock who offered me work, and you're going to be useful for something too." Panic took hold of me. Leave and the safe. And what my mother had left me. Everything would be lost. When I was sure he was passed out drunk in the living room, I dragged myself in pain to Mrs. Josephine's house. It was late at night, but I knocked on her window anyway. "Good Lord, child, what happened to you?" The expression of horror on her face when she saw me spoke for itself. Between tears and sobs, I told her everything. Well, almost everything. About my mother's letter, about the safe, about my father's plans to take us away the next day. I showed her the key I had found in the book. "I knew it," murmured Mrs. Josephine, shaking her head. "Your mother told me she was preparing something, but she didn't tell me exactly what, to protect me. The less I knew, the fewer problems I would have if your father found out." She took the small key from my hand and examined it. "This isn't the key to the safe," she confirmed. "It's the key to the back door of my house. Your mother had a copy, in case she needed quick refuge." I looked at her, confused. "But what about the safe? How will I open it?" "I don't know where the key to the safe is, my child, but I know we need to act quickly. If your father sold the house, he'll want to clear everything out before leaving. The safe, too." That night, I stayed at Mrs. Josephine's house. She treated my wounds, gave me chamomile tea to calm down, and let me sleep in her bed, while she kept watch in a nearby chair. It was the first night in years that I slept without fear. In the morning, Mrs. Josephine went to my house with the excuse of buying some things we would be leaving behind in the move. She returned with alarming news. "Your father is opening the safe right now. There's a man with him. I think it's the buyer of the house." I felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. Everything was lost. The treasure my mother had left for me, the proof of her love, everything would be taken by my father. That's when I had a desperate idea. "Mrs. Josephine, I need to go back there, now." "No way, child. You saw what he did last night. Imagine if he catches you trying to stop him." "I'm not going to stop him," I interrupted, with a determination I didn't know I had. "I just need to see what's inside the safe. I need to know the truth." She hesitated, but something in my look must have convinced her. "I'll create a distraction. You'll have a few minutes." The plan was simple. Mrs. Josephine would knock on the front door, saying she urgently needed to talk about a supposed debt my father had with her late husband. Meanwhile, I would enter through the back door, using the key my mother had left, and peek into the office. With my heart in my throat, I waited for the signal. When I heard Mrs. Josephine's raised voice at the front door and my father's heavy footsteps moving away from the office, I ran into the house. The office door was ajar, something rare, which only happened because my father was in the process of emptying everything. I entered silently and saw the safe open in the wall. I approached, trembling, and looked inside. There was a thick yellowed envelope and something wrapped in a piece of fabric that I immediately recognized. It was a scrap from my mother's favorite dress. Without thinking twice, I took everything and ran back to Mrs. Josephine's house, using the back passage. Minutes later, she also returned, breathless. "Did you get it?" she asked, anxiously. I showed her what I had taken. Together we opened the envelope. Inside was money, not much, but enough for a bus ticket and some time to survive, and a folded paper. It was the continuation of the letter, the missing part. "The key to the safe is hidden inside the frame of our wedding portrait. I know your father would never look there. Tiny Tina, when you read this, you'll probably be old enough to understand. I never wanted to leave you. Each day away from you, even if it's in heaven, will be a day of endless longing. Don't believe the lies your father might tell about me. He wasn't always like this, you know. Drink and the hard life changed him. But that's no excuse for what he became, or for what he might do to you. Use this money to start over, far from here. Look for my sister Irene in Memphis. She doesn't know anything. Your father never let me keep in touch with my family, but she will take you in, I'm sure. With all my love, forever, Mom." The fabric wrapped a thin gold chain with a small pendant of the Virgin Mary, the only jewelry my mother owned. At that moment, sitting in Mrs. Josephine's simple kitchen, crying over the proofs of my mother's love, I made my decision. I would run away that very night before my father could take me to Little Rock. I would run and never look back. Mrs. Josephine helped me arrange a ticket on the bus that left at dawn for Memphis. She gave me a bundle with some clothes, a little food for the journey, and all the love a brave neighbor could give to an almost 13-year-old girl about to face the world alone. "Are you sure you don't want me to go to the sheriff's office?" she asked one last time as she hugged me at the bus station, waiting for the bus. "No," I answered firmly. "They wouldn't do anything. Everyone is afraid of my father, and no one would believe me. Besides, I want to leave all this behind. I want to forget." The bus honked, announcing the imminent departure. Mrs. Josephine hugged me one last time. "Go with God, child. Your mother would be proud of your courage." With tears in my eyes, I boarded the small bus that would take me far away from that nightmare. As the lights of Pine Bluff faded behind, swallowed by the darkness of the Arkansas night, I pressed against my chest my mother's pendant and the letter. Irrefutable proof that I was loved, that I deserved a better life. The bus moved slowly along the highway, and I looked at the stars reflected in the dark window. For the first time in many years, I felt something like peace. I didn't know what awaited me in Memphis. I didn't know if I would find my Aunt Irene. I didn't know what it would be like to live on my own being so young. But I knew with absolute certainty that my mother had loved me. And for now, that was all I needed to know. The journey to Memphis was long and exhausting. Hours inside that bus, sleeping hunched between my small bundle of belongings, eating the little that Mrs. Josephine had given me. The other passengers looked at me with curiosity. Such a young girl traveling alone was unusual. I made up a story about going to meet my mother who worked in Memphis. Nobody questioned much. In the South of those days, stories of families separated by necessity were all too common. At night, alone in my seat, I looked at the starry sky through the window and silently talked to my mother. "I'm going, Mama. I'm following what you wanted for me." The fear of the unknown was great, but the fear of going back was infinitely greater. On the second day of travel, we stopped at a small town to refuel. While waiting, I heard two men talking. Heard about Oliver from Pine Bluff? He's desperately looking for his daughter. My blood froze. I couldn't move to hear better. They say the girl ran off with some of his money. The man is furious, swore he'd find the girl even if he had to turn all of Arkansas upside down. I returned to the bus trembling, hiding even more. He was looking for me. Of course he would be. Not for my well-being, but for the money. The money my mother had saved with so much sacrifice. That night, I had horrible nightmares. I dreamed I was back in my room in Pine Bluff, that my father came in and caught me with the letter and the money. In the dream, his face transformed into something monstrous as he repeated, "You're just like her. Treacherous. Liar." I woke up crying, with the noise of the bus engine drowning out my sobs. When we finally arrived in Memphis, I was exhausted and terrified. The city was enormous compared to Pine Bluff. People everywhere, cars, tall buildings. I felt tiny and completely lost. How would I find my Aunt Irene in a city that size? All I knew was her name. Nothing more. No address, no occupation. My mother's letter gave no specific details. I spent that first day walking around the bus station with my small bundle, trying to find the courage to ask someone about an Irene, sister of Dorothy, who I didn't even know if still lived in Memphis. When night fell, the reality of my situation fell on me like a rock. I was alone in an unknown city with no place to sleep, with money that wouldn't last long, and a furious father looking for me. I sat on a bench near the market and cried until I had no more tears. "Child, are you all right?" I raised my face and saw a middle-aged woman with a cross hanging around her neck, looking at me with concern. "I'm looking for my aunt," I managed to say between sobs, "but I don't know where she lives." "What's her name?" "Irene. She's my mother's sister, Dorothy, who died." The woman sat down beside me. "And you've come from far away looking for her?" I nodded, wiping my tears. "Look, it's getting dark. It's not safe for you to stay here alone. Why don't you come with me to the church? Pastor Augustus can help find your aunt tomorrow." I hesitated. Go with a stranger? But what else could I do? The woman's name was Doris, and she was the caretaker of First Baptist Church. She took me there and explained my situation to Pastor Augustus, an elderly gentleman with a soft voice who offered me a room at the back of the church to spend the night. "Tomorrow, we'll put an announcement on the radio," he promised. It's the quickest way to find someone in Memphis. I slept poorly that night. Despite the clean bed and full stomach, Doris had insisted on feeding me with a warm chicken soup. The feeling of being pursued didn't leave me. In every shadow, in every noise, I imagined my father finding me. The next morning, Pastor Augustus kept his promise and went to the local radio station to place an announcement. Looking for Irene, sister of Dorothy from Pine Bluff, deceased. Her niece awaits at First Baptist Church. I spent the day helping Doris clean the church, to repay somehow the help. She didn't ask questions about my past, and I was grateful for that. Only once, when she noticed the marks on my arms, did her eyes fill with tears, but she said nothing. In the late afternoon, while sweeping the church courtyard, I saw a woman approaching hurriedly. She was tall and thin, with black hair tied in a simple bun. There was something familiar about her, something that made my heart race. "Are you Dorothy's niece?" she asked, breathless, as if she had run. I nodded, unable to speak. "My God in heaven," she murmured, covering her mouth with her hands. "You're the spitting image of her." It was Irene, my aunt. She hugged me right there in the middle of the church courtyard, and we cried together. She for the sister lost years ago, me for the relief of finally finding a piece of my mother in this world. That night, in Irene's small house in the Cooper Young neighborhood, I told her an edited version of my story. I talked about my mother's death, the letter I had found, the decision to run away to find her. I couldn't tell about the abuse. The shame and fear were still too great. "Dorothy and I lost contact after she married your father," explained Irene. He never liked our family, said we were too simple for his taste. Ironic, isn't it? A mill worker thinking he was better than others. She showed me the few photos she had of my mother, one of them, the two together, still teenagers, smiling at the camera. My mother was beautiful, with lively eyes and a wide smile that I had almost forgotten. She wrote once, continued Irene, saying she was sick, but that I shouldn't tell anyone. She asked me to pray for her, and for you. It was the last letter I received. Aunt Irene took me in without hesitation. She transformed her small sewing room into a space for me, shared the little she had, and promised that I could stay as long as I wanted. We're family, she said simply. But fear didn't leave me. A week after arriving in Memphis, I saw a man who looked like my father at the market. It probably wasn't him, but the panic I felt was so intense that I became ill right there, among the fruit and vegetable stands. That night, I had the worst nightmare yet. I dreamed that my father found Irene's house, that he dragged me and her back to Pine Bluff, that he locked us in that dark room. I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat. Irene came running and hugged me until the tremors stopped. "What happened in that house, Albertina?" she asked softly. "What did your father do to you?" And then, like a dam that breaks, everything came out. Between desperate sobs, I told everything. The nights of terror, the poisonous words, the pain, the humiliation, the constant fear. I told about how he used my mother's memory to hurt me even more, how he repeated that she didn't love me, that she had abandoned me. Irene cried with me, cradling me as if I were a small child again. "Forgive me," she repeated. "Forgive me for not being there, for not realizing, for not doing anything." "It wasn't your fault," I managed to say. "You didn't even know I existed." "But now I do," she replied firmly, "and no one is going to hurt you anymore, I promise." The next day, Irene did something that changed everything. She took me to the police station. I resisted, of course. The fear was paralyzing. In my head, no one would believe me, and that would only make my father more furious when he found me. "He'll kill me if he knows," I whispered, trembling at the door of the station. "He won't even get close to you," Irene guaranteed, with a determination I had never seen before. "Trust me." The sheriff, a middle-aged man named Nestor, received us in his office. With Irene at my side, holding my hand, I told my story again. I showed the marks I still had on my body, my mother's letter, the money she had left for me. To my surprise, he believed me. He didn't question, he didn't doubt. He just listened attentively and then said something I will never forget. "You are a very brave girl, braver than many grown men who have passed through this station." He made a police report, took our formal statements, and promised that if my father appeared in Memphis looking for me, he would be immediately detained. "He won't get near you," he assured, almost repeating Irene's words. That night, lying in my improvised bed in Irene's sewing room, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. It wasn't the end of fear. That would take years to completely diminish, but it was a beginning. For the first time, adults were on my side, believing me, protecting me. I held the Virgin Mary pendant that had been my mother's and whispered a prayer of thanks. I thanked for having found Irene, for having had the courage to run away, for having discovered the truth about my mother's love. And more than anything, I thanked for the small seed of hope that was beginning to sprout in my heart. The hope that, maybe someday, I could leave all that horror behind and build a new life. Days later, we received the news. My father had been seen in Little Rock, asking about me on the buses that made the route to Memphis. Sheriff Nestor sent a telegram to the police there with an order for detention. "And if he escapes?" I asked, terrified at the possibility. "Then we'll go somewhere else," replied Irene without hesitation. "Wherever necessary. I won't let him find you, Albertina. Never again." The initial months in Memphis were of adaptation and healing. Aunt Irene enrolled me in the local school. I had lost almost a year with that whole situation, and encouraged me to make friends, to resume a normal life. but normality seemed like something distant, almost impossible for me. The nights were still populated by nightmares, and any loud noise made me tremble. "It will take time, Tiny Tina," Irene would say with her infinite patience. "The wounds of the body heal faster than those of the soul." She worked as a seamstress in a small clothing shop in downtown Memphis. She didn't earn much, but it was enough to support us. Gradually, I learned the craft from her. First, just watching, then helping with small tasks like sewing on buttons or making simple hems. 2 months after my arrival, we received the news. My father had been arrested in Little Rock, trying to board a bus to Memphis. Sheriff Nestor came personally to inform us, assuring that he would be detained for a good while, accused not only of the abuse against me, but also of other irregularities they discovered during the investigation: fraud at the mill, unpaid debts, assaults on other residents of Pine Bluff. "He won't hurt you anymore, Albertina," assured the sheriff, with a gentleness that contrasted with his severe appearance. "You can live your life without looking back." That news brought immense relief, as if a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. In the following weeks, I began to sleep better, to smile more, to open up slowly to the world around me. Irene noticed the change and encouraged even more my interest in sewing. "You have good hands for this, just like your mother," she would say with pride. I discovered that sewing had a therapeutic effect on me. The concentration needed to align the stitches, the satisfaction of seeing a piece taking shape. All this helped me focus on the present, to push away the dark thoughts about the past. A year passed, then 2. I grew, learned, transformed. At 15, I was already a skilled seamstress, helping Irene with more complex orders. At school, my grades were good, especially in English and literature. I devoured all the books I could borrow from the public library. It was through books that I met Everett. He worked as an assistant at the library, was 5 years older than me, studied law at night, and had the kindest eyes I had ever seen. At first, our conversations were just about the books I borrowed. Then, we started discussing the characters, the stories, life. "You talk about these books as if they were old friends," he told me once, with a smile that lit up his tanned face. "Maybe because, for a long time, they were the only friends I had," I replied without thinking, and immediately regretted the excessive sincerity. But Everett wasn't scared by my response. On the contrary, it seemed to awaken something in him, a genuine curiosity, a desire to know me better. Gradually, our conversations extended beyond library hours. He invited me for ice cream, then to watch a folk music performance in the park, and then to meet his family on a Sunday lunch. Irene was worried, of course. After all I had been through, the idea of getting close to a man, even if it was someone apparently respectable like Everett, made her uneasy. "Be careful, my child," she would say. "Men are like watermelons. On the outside, it's one thing. On the inside, it can be something completely different." But Everett proved to be exactly what he seemed: gentle, respectful, patient. He knew I carried deep wounds, even without knowing all the details. He never pressured me, never crossed the boundaries I established, never made me feel less because of my past. "Everyone has a story, Albertina," he told me one night as we walked along the Memphis riverfront. "What matters is not where we came from, but where we're going." At 17, on a hot July day in 1969, I received a letter that would change the course of my life once again. It was from Sheriff Nestor, informing that my father had died in prison, complications from cirrhosis, the result of years of alcohol abuse. The letter also said that, as his only heir, I had the right to claim any property he might have owned. "I don't want anything from him," I said to Irene, throwing the letter on the table. "Nothing." "I understand," she replied, placing her hand on mine. "But think carefully, Tiny Tina. That house in Pine Bluff, it was also your mother's house. There lived her memories, good and bad. Maybe there's something there worth recovering." Everett, who by that time was already a constant presence in our lives, offered to accompany me to Pine Bluff. "You don't need to face this alone," he said, with that quiet firmness I so admired. After days of reflection, I decided to accept the offer. Not for the money or the property itself, but for the possibility of closing that chapter of my life once and for all, on my own terms. The journey back to Pine Bluff was surreal. The bus following the same route I had taken years before, but now in the opposite direction. I was no longer that frightened girl running away in the middle of the night. I was a young woman, with plans, dreams, and most importantly, with people who truly cared about me by my side. When we disembarked, the town seemed smaller than I remembered. Some things had changed, others remained exactly the same. The house where I spent my childhood was abandoned, with weeds growing in the yard and dusty windows. When I opened the front door, the smell of mold and abandonment hit me like a wave. For a moment, all the old fears returned. I could almost hear my father's heavy footsteps approaching the bedroom. Everett noticed my hesitation and held my hand firmly. "I'm here," he said simply, and those 2 words gave me strength to continue. We walked through the rooms slowly. The kitchen where my mother prepared our meals, humming. The living room where she taught me to embroider on Sunday afternoons. And finally, the office. The place that had been central to that whole story of pain and redemption. The safe was still there, open and empty, as I had left it that fateful night. I ran my fingers over the cold metal surface, remembering everything that object had represented for me. "This is where I found the truth," I explained to Everett, "the truth that set me free." As we searched the house, we found other things my mother had left behind: old photographs, a notebook with handwritten recipes, small mementos of a life that was cut short too soon. Each object was like a piece of her returning to me, filling the empty spaces in my memory. On the last day in Pine Bluff, before leaving, I made a decision. With the help of Everett and a local lawyer, I put the house up for sale. The money, we decided, would be used for a new beginning. "You know what I want to do?" I asked Everett as the bus pulled away from the station, taking us back to Memphis. "I want to open a small sewing studio, a place where I can create, teach other women, maybe even help girls who have gone through difficult situations like me." He smiled, that smile that from the beginning had made me believe there was genuine goodness in the world. "It's a wonderful idea, Albertina, and I want to be by your side to see it happen." 3 months later, on my 18th birthday, Everett asked me to marry him. It wasn't a surprise. Our hearts already knew we were destined to walk together. Irene cried with joy upon receiving the news, embracing us as if we were her own children. The wedding was simple, in the small church in the Cooper Young neighborhood. I wore a white dress that Irene and I sewed together, with delicate lace on the sleeves and hem. Everett waited at the altar, with that look that always made me feel safe, valued, loved. When the pastor asked if I accepted Everett as my lawful husband, I answered with a firm voice and a heart overflowing with certainty, "I do." At that moment, while Everett's hands gently held mine, I felt as if my mother was there, smiling at me. She had left me that safe, full of love and hope, so that one day I could build my own life, free from the shadows of the past. And that's exactly what I did. Today, at 73, I thank every day for having found my way to this peaceful life here in Springdale. The Arkansas sun is different from the Memphis sun, drier, less stuffy, but equally welcoming. My house is simple, but it's my refuge, my little corner of peace that I conquered after so much struggle. The move to Springdale happened in 1995, when Everett received an invitation to work as a professor at the community college that was starting here. Our children were already grown. Marcella was 24, Heather 22, and Timothy, the youngest, 18. It was a difficult decision to leave Memphis, where we had built our life for almost 3 decades, but my heart told me it was time for a new adventure. My sewing studio in Memphis had grown over the years, transforming into a small school where I taught the craft to women who, like me, needed to rebuild their lives. When we came to Springdale, I brought that passion with me. I soon set up a space at the back of the house, and it wasn't long before orders started coming in. party dresses, curtains, baby layettes. Today, I'm retired from professional sewing. My eyesight isn't the same anymore. My fingers hurt after too much time with the needle. But I continue with my collection of boxes. Each one holds a piece of my history. I have a special one, made of cedar wood with delicate carvings, where I keep the few photographs of my mother, the letter she left me, and the Virgin Mary pendant that was in the safe. Everett passed away 5 years ago, after 48 years together. A silent heart attack while he slept, without suffering. The pain of loss was immense, but different from all the other pains I experienced in life. It was a clean pain, if I can call it that. The pain of losing someone who genuinely loved me, who helped me heal old wounds, who showed me that I deserved to be loved. I thank every day for our 3 wonderful children. Marcelo, the oldest, inherited his father's firmness and integrity. He's a lawyer, defending social causes at a firm right here in Springdale. Heather went into education. She's a university professor in Memphis. And Timothy, my restless youngest, works with technology in Nashville. Computer things that I confess I don't quite understand, but that he tries to explain to me patiently when he comes to visit. My mornings start early. The habit of waking up with the sunrise remains from my childhood days in Pine Bluff. I prepare my coffee, sit on the back porch, and watch the birds that come to eat the berries from the blackberry bush I planted when we arrived. Afterwards, I usually occupy myself organizing my boxes, writing in my journal, or reading a book. I'm still a devourer of stories, like in the times of the library where I met my Everett. On Thursdays, I go to the community center in the neighborhood where I participate in a storytelling group for children. The little ones love it when I tell American folk tales with all the colorful and mysterious details. I keep alive the tradition that my mother started so many years ago when she told me about Johnny Appleseed and Paul Bunyan before bedtime. On Sundays, the house fills with voices and laughter when Marcelo comes with his family for lunch. I prepare chicken and dumplings, a dish I learned to make here that became a family tradition. The grandchildren run around the yard, argue, make up, ask me to tell stories about when their father was little. These are moments I cherish, like precious items in my mental boxes. I won't say I don't have difficult days. Sometimes an old memory emerges out of nowhere, a smell, a word, a dream, and takes me back to those dark years in Pine Bluff. But I've learned not to let these memories dominate me. I breathe deeply, open my special box, look at my mother's pendant, and remember that her story and mine didn't end in tragedy, but in redemption. Life has taught me that we are much more than our traumas. We are also our victories, our loves, our capacity to rebuild and restart. Each of my boxes represents a chapter of this journey. Some hold painful memories, others priceless joys, but all are part of who I am today. And who am I today? I'm Albertina, a 73-year-old lady, resident of Springdale for almost 30 years, mother of 3, grandmother of 6, widow of a good man. I'm a woman who learned that truth, even when it hurts, has the power to set free. I'm someone who chose to believe in love, despite all the reasons I had not to do so. My dears, if you've come this far with me, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's not easy to open drawers of the past that we've kept locked for so long. But sometimes, sharing our pain is what helps us take the final step in the journey of healing. If you're going through something similar to what I lived, or know someone in that situation, I want you to know you are not alone. And more importantly, you don't deserve this, no matter what they make you believe. Just as I believed for years in my father's lies, many people live trapped in cycles of abuse, convinced they don't deserve better. I learned that age doesn't define our strength, but rather our ability to start over each day. Even at 13, I had the courage to run away in search of a better life. Even at 73, I still find the strength to tell my story, in the hope that it might help someone. My wrinkles are maps of survival. Each one tells a story of pain overcome. When I look in the mirror today, I don't just see an elderly lady. I see a warrior who faced her demons and won. Life taught me that even in the deepest darkness, our inner light never goes out. There were moments when I thought I couldn't take one more day, but something inside me, perhaps my mother's voice, whispering through that letter, gave me strength to continue. I never allowed my dignity to be stolen, even when they tried to take everything from me. The body can be hurt, the mind can be poisoned with lies, but the spirit, the spirit is something no one can break if you don't allow it. I discovered that we are stronger than we imagine, especially when we think we can't take it anymore. It's precisely when we're at rock bottom that we discover resources we didn't even know we had. Time doesn't heal all wounds, but it teaches us to live with them and still smile. I carry scars, yes, some visible, others hidden in the depths of the soul. But I've learned not to let them define who I am. My story isn't about what was done to me, but about how I chose to respond. I could have become bitter, distrustful, unable to love. Instead, I chose to believe in goodness. I chose to build a family based on respect and genuine love. I chose to break the cycle. If you're suffering, seek local authorities, protection organizations, or trusted people in your community. No matter where you are in the world, human dignity and the right to a life without violence are universal values. And if you've been through something similar and survived, share your story when you feel ready. Your testimony may be the light that will guide someone from darkness to hope. Like a chain of strength and solidarity, we can all together create a world where fewer people need to go through what I went through. Now, my dears who have accompanied me this far, I need to make a special request from the bottom of my heart. If this story touched you, if you identified with it, or if you know someone who is going through an abuse situation, please click now on the subscribe button and activate the notification bell. Each subscription to this channel means one more voice against the silence that protects abusers. Share this video immediately with someone who needs to hear that it's possible to escape, that it's possible to rebuild, that it's possible to love again. Your sharing can literally save a life. It can be the push someone needed to seek help. It can be the difference between continuing in hell or finding the path to freedom. And leave in the comments the word rebirth, so I know you watched till the end and understood the most important message. It's never too late to start over, to be reborn from the ashes of pain. Do this now. Don't wait another minute. Your action can be the first step to changing someone's story. Thank you for listening to me. May God bless each one of you, and may you never lack the courage to face life's storms.